almost kind of tastes like too good to be true, or like a drug when you have something sweet in a deficit. We know that, I mean, fiber will slow gastric emptying, which assists with your appetite and hunger signaling. So it goes hand in hand with basically reducing hunger. On the other side of it, we also have food focus and appetite, which are two different things. So hunger being more so physiological, and then appetite being more so psychological and associated with your environment or your psychology, etc. So we'll focus a little bit more on true hunger at the moment, and how different food choices can really impact that. I think the reality is the majority of people in a deficit aren't necessarily, and I don't want to actually speak for everyone here, but I think from a physiological standpoint, it's less likely that you're going to be in a state where hunger is present 100% of the time. Like there are bodybuilders, of course, or physique athletes where they get to a state of conditioning where their physiology is kind of screaming at them. It's like the dial is turned on full 24/7 about, okay, I need more food. I need to get back to a point of equilibrium and homeostasis. Whereas a more standardized cut for more normal body fat ranges, the dial won't be as high, which I think is where people will arguably have even more success with their fiber intake and just their food volume in general. But final point I'll say on this before I throw it over to you, like, again, there definitely is like a middle ground where like you can have 10 grams of fiber a day and have like very quick gastric emptying, and like your transit of food will be quick, but you can also have far too much fiber and just feel super uncomfortable, which sure will probably negate your appetite, but not in the way that you want if you're just feeling bloated and disgusting the whole day.
Yeah, totally agree. It's one of the first things I look at around, someone's diet, especially if the goal is wanting to have weight loss or wanting to, we're trying to create a calorie deficit. It's around prioritizing really those high volume, low calorie, high satiety based foods, high fibrous foods. We're talking about our fruits, our vegetables, our whole grains, those sorts of foods, and like almost building a meal around those foods rather than the other way around is kind of how I look at it. It's often that people is like, oh, what am I going to throw in with my chicken and rice? It's like, oh, a bit of veg. It's like, okay, well, actually, can we use like the veg as the main portion of the meal and build everything else around that? I find is an easy win. And I totally agree with the comment around that other hunger versus appetite, and maybe appetite being a little bit even more of a, I guess when people first start to go into a diet, they think, oh, I'm actually quite hungry all the time, or that it's actually just appetite driving that noise. Whereas if you do sit in that for a little bit longer and you build a routine and you stay strong in that routine and that structure, that noise does start to go away. And, especially when you are, really building that really solid foundation around nutrition and movement, like we've said before, like you even at times will like just forget about being hungry. Like you've gone from maybe snacking in the afternoon to going for a walk at that time, and all of a sudden that head noise has passed because you're filling up your day with something else rather than snacking. And there are definitely things that I try and look for with clients, like around setting that routine and structure, and again, like trying to push away some of that head noise and fill it with other things that might bring you joy, whether it is being outside, whether it's something to do with craft or like whatever it may be, like just to get your head away from what you would usually be doing.
Yeah, I find that preoccupation and distraction are key. Like I've definitely got some things to say about the food focus and the appetite. I guess to wrap up like the fiber and like the extra volume, I think a lot of people will be on the right track is what I've seen, and they'll know that, okay, like I should include some vegetables with a meal, or I should be having some whole grains. But I think in a deficit, taking it one step further and just increasing the amount is going to be key. Because like, especially with non-starchy vegetables, like you can increase the amount quite significantly within reason, of course. Like as it is, like the guidelines for vegetable intake is like around 450 grams per day. And most people are below that, even in a deficit. So even just meeting those guidelines would be great and have a good impact. And then there's obviously no issue with exceeding that as long as you're not going to unproductive extents where you're driving it up like well above a kilo. I find that's a point of diminishing returns. So, and if you're just noticing that you're getting abdominal or stomach distension without really any positive impact on hunger, you're probably at a point of diminishing returns, and maybe it's starting to become a bit more appetite and food focus related. Like on the topic of like appetite, I think, the preoccupation and distraction is key. And I also like what you said around sitting with it, because if you sit with it and ask yourself, okay, is this true physiological hunger, or is this appetite? Is it caused by something in my environment? Like, did I see someone eating something? Am I a bit stressed or anxious at the moment? Then I think the power of information is critical here, because it's like self-empowerment or self-education, where you're discovering that yourself and you're informing your next decision rather than reacting to something. So I think reacting is the hard part, where you like reach for something, or you just want the appetite to go away. So you feel like you need to grab something, or you eat what's on someone's plate because it tastes really good or smells really good. And then you've reacted to a situation, and then you're kind of clawing yourself back. So yeah, I think just reflecting on that in general, and also there's no one size fits all for this, but more so examining whether those highly palatable foods in a deficit helps you, or just like makes or hinders you, makes things more difficult. Like for me, for example, it almost kind of tastes like too good to be true, or like a drug when you have something sweet in a deficit, because especially when it's highly palatable and energy dense at the same time. Like it's, I don't know, like if when you're in comp prep, for example, did you find it easiest to just not have anything highly palatable? Like the thing is, our degree or our criteria of palatability changes so much. Like for us, like a yogurt bowl tastes like cheesecake or something, whereas for other people that might not be the case.
Yeah, I reflect on this with my fiance many, like with Hannah, so many times, like of just being like, oh, what do you like? I remember being in comp prep and she would be cooking something, and I'd come out of the other room like, oh God, what are you cooking? She's like, it's just garlic and olive oil in a pan. I'd be so food focused and heightened, like that. Yeah, like the smells of food, like everything was so heightened. And yeah, when you do like have something like that, when being in such like a deficit for so long, or an aggressive deficit, then yeah, for sure, like then you just want more and more. Like that's, you might have something, and that's all you think about for the next couple of days of like, oh God, like how good was that? And that could be a very sometimes slippery slope for some people. I do want to make a point of like, when I guess disassociate, or having an understanding of like hunger and appetite, and having a difference between the two. But I think when being in a deficit, like going through a fat loss phase where you are actively trying to lose weight, like there has to be an understanding of like you should be hungry some
Mm,
of the time. Like you should have appetite. Like that's a good thing. Like that's probably tells us that you are in a calorie deficit and you are losing weight. Like, and if you don't have that any of the time, then there may be a question of, okay, is actually what like, and if scale weight isn't moving as well, then we could question whether we actually are in a calorie deficit or not. Like you should have a sense of hunger at times. And I think that's really important to note. And I think some people almost like scared of it, or they don't want to feel hungry, or they don't want to have that appetite arousal, or it can be, they'll almost try and do everything that they can to negate it, where you almost not need to welcome it, but just have an understanding of that's a very, very normal
mm.
physiological process that will happen in this phase.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think, yeah, that's a great point, and it, I mean, should come even before like addressing the fiber or the food focus, like just being, because like if we didn't talk about the point you just mentioned, like it may even come across that, okay, yeah, we're saying all hunger is bad here, which of course isn't the case. I think the unproductive hunger is bad, or the unproductive food focus. But ultimately, as humans, like we need food. If we didn't have food focus, like we didn't have desire to eat, then we like one wouldn't be able to nourish our bodies, and we wouldn't strive to stay alive. Like it's just a survival mechanism. So, but I 100% agree. Like, and that's honestly one of the first things I'll ask clients is when, if they have plateaued, or there's like like a false plateau where like someone feels like their weight has stagnated, I'll ask them, okay, how hungry are you? Like, are you going to bed with like an empty stomach and like feeling like you're running on empty? Something I also try and reinforce when I'm in a deficit, and to clients as well, is like that mental reframe of like, instead of hunger being bad and uncomfortable and unpleasant, hunger equals progress being made, quite literally. It's the same with like, and I try and analogize it to the gym as well, with certain individuals who are like often, like we know that uncomfortability in the gym and pain, for lack of a better word, is associated with adaptation and training hard. So like we want to basically correlate that with the deficit as well. Like uncomfortability and within a certain range of what is productive is like associated with progress.
Yeah, 100%.
I think going back to food focus a little bit as well is just some general principles or guidelines as well. So like, for example, if you are in a deficit right now, ask yourself, would this meal taste just as good to me? And would it satisfy me just as much if I didn't add on the flavor enhancers? Because, for example, if you're making protein oats for breakfast and you've got some tasty protein powder, you've got some fruit in there as well, maybe you've got some small amount of peanut butter on top or nut butter, whatever it may be. But then you're also adding in like 30 mils of like sugar-free maple syrup. Like, what is the sugar-free maple syrup actually doing there when I would argue that, and I would just argue personally because everyone's different, but that meal is going to taste pretty damn good without the maple syrup. Like, is the maple syrup just making it so that when you do finish it, you're wanting even more because of the palatable nature of it? And I feel similar to, like, let's say a yogurt bowl, but then adding diet jelly in the yogurt bowl, like the yogurt bowl would taste pretty damn good. So like, I'm not arguing that it tastes different or better with the maple syrup because like that's what maple syrup is for. Like it tastes damn good, but more so, is it maybe making things a little bit too palatable, making you think about that meal the night before when you go to bed, or is the diet food influencing you in other ways like your digestion?
Yeah, definitely. It's like if you are in like because the first thing I kind of think of is more like comp prep in those situations where people probably start to use those more flavor enhancers,
Mm.
a little bit more frequently and in like sometimes in larger amounts as well. And it's almost like, well, like anything is going to taste pretty good in the comp prep. Like when you start to get down to more of those, like when you start to get deeper into comp prep. So do we really need to be utilizing these sorts of foods when all food's going to taste pretty damn good? Like I remember having plain like white rice with olive oil, salt, and chicken, and that tasted like an absolute gourmet meal. Like I could have eaten 5 of those. Sure, that's a very very extreme example, but I think as well that's where I guess it does come back to having foods that you do enjoy and maybe keeping them a little bit more consistent and really working on that structure and that enjoyment for the foods that you do have, so you may not have to utilize those other sorts of foods as well.
Mm. On that point as well, like our palate can genuinely adapt very quickly. So if you're don't like if someone who's listening to this wants to try what we've just suggested, like maybe they are recognizing that they're choosing highly palatable foods when maybe they don't need to in a deficit just because they feel like they're scratching that itch of food focus and they want to have something that's sweet. Like when you take out that highly palatable food, it is going to taste different initially, but your palate will adapt. And I find the same thing because I just am more of a savory person. I eat mainly savory food. Occasionally, when I do have something sweet, like whether it's for a birthday or a slice of cake, or whatever it may be, like I really notice quite distinctly the following day that like my food tastes quite different. Even after like brushing my teeth, going to bed, waking up in the morning, like my first sip of black coffee definitely tastes significantly worse than it should. So something to just bear in mind around the how our sort of flavor and taste receptors work and how our palate adapts. I think probably the final tip that I wanted to mention was around the eating window, because it is very individual, will depend a lot on like when people wake up, when they train, and when their appetite cues are. Some people get quite hungry in the morning, other people get hungrier towards the end of the day. I think firstly what I'd say here is don't set yourself up for failure by thinking that backloading is the answer to making dieting easier. So what I mean by that is like having like a small breakfast, a small lunch, and then having a lot of food for dinner, because you're going to be potentially setting yourself up for overindulgence. Like if you are struggling to remain accountable to or consistent with your calorie targets, because you're just so deprived leading up to that final meal that you just end up eating the house down. Secondly is like you're kind of living life at like 50% if like you're under fueling during the day just to have more in the evening, and then in the evening you're just sitting around, like you're either finishing up work or you're watching TV. But very rarely do people eat their final meal and then go exercise. Like so, I'd just be conscious of that as well from the timing of your meals and the size of your meals. I think it usually is better to doesn't even mean front loading, but having a slightly more even distribution of food during the day.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it is very individualized, I guess, this kind of topic, because everyone is very different in their daily routine, their structure, when they go to work, when they train, all that sort of thing. So it is around managing and seeing what works best for you. Like, do you get hungry in the afternoon because you are sitting around at home? Or do you work out in the morning so you might need a little bit more food around that time because you get hungry after a workout? So it really kind of does depend on where your hunger / appetite cues kind of are, and managing it around that. And yeah, I'm a bit more on the side of when working with a client, depending, of course, on what those kind of variables we spoke about, on being a little bit more front load, because from my experience and working with people usually breakfast just isn't something that's kind of on their mind. And if we can really utilize low calorie, high volume foods, high fiber based foods, having a good amount of protein. And the reason for that is not only for muscle and physique development, but protein is a very satiating macronutrient. And you could argue one of the most satiated macronutrients as well. So optimizing that morning or morning meals as much as possible can very much set you up for the back end
Mm.
of the day. And that's often where I see people start to fall become a bit more or make it a bit more challenging, especially in a deficit where they might get home from work in an afternoon or an evening and they go straight to the cupboard and they look for what to eat. And sure, you can still utilize strategies around that eating window or that eating time in general. But if that hunger or appetite cues aren't there to start with, then that makes that situation much easier to deal with. And I do really believe that can come from prioritizing the morning space as much as possible.
Mm. I think also like our willpower does degrade as the day goes on, like with stress and fatigue and like expenditure of energies. Yeah, 100%. I think also it goes back to leveraging some of the other points, like rather than skipping breakfast, are you able to, like, let's say a diet, like a super diet friendly meal would be like a egg white omelet with one whole egg and throwing in a good amount of vegetables in there, like mushrooms and onion and tomato or a capsicum or red pepper for people in the US. So, and then topping that with salsa or something or low fat cheese, like that's like a 300 calorie meal and like is the size of someone's head. So rather than skipping breakfast, but I'm going to play devil's advocate here and say like, I think time restricted feeding can be still a tool in the toolbox for certain individuals. The thing in a deficit, it may be a little bit, especially a chronic deficit, it may be easier to go to the point of no return where maybe like you are doing potentially a small amount of harm to protein synthesis or your ability to fuel. So it works well if you train at specific times. But for example, if you train in the morning and then you're fasting throughout that, like it's not going to work very well. Like you're not able to fuel for your workout or have spike muscle protein synthesis. So it would probably be better for if you're like an evening trainer or late afternoon trainer. Like if you find it easy, if you're less hungry in the morning, you can have a couple black coffees and then sort of push out food till a late morning or midday and then fuel from there for the workout. I think it can work quite well. I think usually I would say up to like a 16 hours of not eating and then 8 hour window of having food.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's like, again, it just comes down to the individual. It's very
Mm.
individual dependent. It depends on what you like to do. Like, do you have the willpower to be able to do that, or are you someone who, no, I need to be eating frequently to help with my association with food or food noise or whatever it may be. So yeah, that's definitely something that can be utilized for some people for sure. But again, it's very individualized depending on
Yeah. I find it's something that can be used circumstantially as well, or like not necessarily every day. Like if someone rests twice a week, then like doing it on the rest days where they don't have to worry about training window and they can maybe they wake up slightly later if they don't train in the morning. Like it may be a little bit easier. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think as well, like people might think, what about it's only those 2 days? Like, how is that going to make a big difference in across the week? But I guess when we're talking about a calorie deficit, like it does come down to the weekly total. So if you have you do fast on those 2 rest days, and that significantly reduces your total calorie intake for the week, then that going to make a big difference in terms of you being in a calorie deficit and driving forward weight loss as a whole. And even for, I guess this is where it comes down to more routine and structure. For some people, that might mean for maybe their weekdays. And TBD did a really great post on this recently around, maybe you eat lesser during the week on weekdays and maybe you have a little bit more food on the weekends for whatever matter, or it might be sporadic where you have high food on training days and lower food on non-training days, or it may be around fasting on some days versus not. Like, again, it's very individualized, but it all comes down to that weekly total at the end of the day.